The second container had been sitting on that break room counter for 11 minutes. Harmony hadn't touched it. She was on the floor with her laptop, and her reading glasses pushed up the wrong way, cross-legged, eating her own food and minding her business like a woman who had absolutely nowhere better to be at 8:52 on a Tuesday night. Which, technically, she didn't. But that wasn't the point. The point was the second container. It was always the second container. She'd started doing it 10 months ago with no announcement, no explanation, and no expectation of a thank you. She cooked for herself every morning before work because she liked real food, and she didn't trust herself to make good decisions at a deli counter after a 12-hour day. One morning she made extra, then she did it again. Then it stopped being extra and started being the plan. Kim Yoon-gi, CEO of KYG Holdings' 35th floor corner office, owner of a calendar so packed his assistant Benji had panic attacks by Thursday. That man forgot to eat. Not in the way regular people forget to eat, in the way that suggested food was a minor inconvenience interrupting more important work. Harmony had figured this out on her third week at the firm when she noticed he went from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. without a single meal, and then ordered delivery. He barely touched because by then his stomach had long given up asking. She didn't say anything about it. She just started bringing 2 portions. She told herself it was practical. She was cooking anyway. It cost her almost nothing extra. It was a logical solution to an observable problem, and that was all it was. She had been telling herself this for 347 days. Down the hall, the double doors to the corner office opened. Yoon-gi came out the way he always came out after 8 p.m. Jacket off, sleeves rolled up, red pen in hand, looking like the building was lucky to still have him in it. His assistant Benji was behind him trying to get a word in about the Tokyo files. Yoon-gi wasn't listening to Benji. He was already moving, not consciously. That was the thing nobody could explain and everybody had noticed. He didn't decide to walk toward the break room the way you decide to send an email or take a meeting. He just went. The way a phone finds a signal. The way water finds low ground. He saw her through the glass before he got there. Laptop, floor, reading glasses at the wrong angle. The second container still waiting on the counter. Something in his shoulders dropped about half an inch. He told Benji to finish the notes and walked in. "You skipped lunch again," Harmony said without looking up. "I had something. A protein bar isn't something. A protein bar is a cry for help." He sat down across from her on the floor, not on a chair, the floor. Like this was the most reasonable place in the building to be at 8:52 p.m. Because when you did it enough times, it started to feel that way. She slid the container toward him. No ceremony, no eye contact. Just the quiet transfer of something that had been made for him hours ago by someone who knew he'd need it. He opened it and started eating, and she went back to her spreadsheet, and the two of them sat in the particular silence of people who have been doing this long enough that words are optional. Outside the break room glass, Bria was pretending to look for something in the copy room across the hall. She wasn't looking for anything. She was watching. Bria from Baltimore, senior analyst, the woman who had not once in 4 years been accused of minding her own business, was watching Harmony Martin feed Kim Yoon-gi dinner for the 347th time, and feeling something between affection and frustration that she couldn't always separate. She went back to a desk and pulled open the bottom drawer where a sticky note was taped to the inside. 20 names, $2 amounts next to each one. 4 months of an office bet that Yoon-gi would never find out about because he was the kind of man who looked at spreadsheets for 12 hours a day and missed the most obvious thing in the room. Bria looked at the note, looked across the floor at the break room, looked at the note again. She closed the drawer. On the other side of the floor, Felix was shutting down his monitors. Felix managed risk and spoke in complete sentences maybe 6 times a day, but those 6 times were always worth hearing. He'd told Bria 3 months ago very calmly that the situation was going to resolve itself either well or badly, and there was a 63% chance it would be badly, because smart men were often stupid about the things that mattered most. Bria had put him down for bet B. The next evening, Harmony Martin did something she had not done in 348 days. She left early. She closed her laptop at 6:52 p.m., packed her bag, went to the bathroom, and came back wearing different shoes and small gold earrings. Bria saw the earrings and went very still. "You leaving?" Bria said it carefully, the way you say something when you already know the answer is going to matter. That's what packing a bag means, yeah. What about? Bria gestured toward the break room, toward the counter, toward the place where the second container always appeared at a certain time every evening, like the most reliable thing on that floor. "I didn't cook today," Harmony said. Clean, simple, no elaboration. She got on the elevator and she was gone. Bria stood there for a moment. Then she took out her phone and typed one message to the group chat. It said, "It's happening, 8:39 p.m. Yoon-gi came out of his office. Red pen, tablet, sleeves. The usual. He walked to the break room. The counter was empty. He stood there for 10 full seconds, looking at a counter that had never once been empty at this hour. And the thing on his face wasn't irritation exactly. It wasn't confusion exactly. It was the specific look of a person who has just reached for something they expected to be there and found air. He got a glass of water he didn't drink, went back to his office, sat down, tried to work, he did not work. 20 minutes later, he went back to the break room. Still empty, he stood there again. Longer this time. And if you had asked him right then what exactly he was waiting for, he would not have been able to tell you. He would have said he was thirsty. He would have said he was stretching his legs. He would have found something reasonable to say, and he would have believed it. But the break room was empty, and something about that felt wrong in a way that had nothing to do with food. He ordered delivery at 9 p.m. Expensive. Good restaurant. He barely touched it. If you're already feeling something watching this man stand in an empty break room not understanding why it feels so quiet, you should be. Because Harmony Martin has been feeling the exact same way for almost a year, and she finally decided to walk out of it. The question is whether he figures that out before it's too late. Stay with us. This story is just getting started. Like this video if you're already Team Harmony. Drop a comment, and if this is your first time here, please do well to subscribe. The next morning, Yoon-gi was in before everyone. This was not unusual. What was unusual was that he was in before Harmony, which had happened exactly twice in 3 years, and both times involved international time zones, and a flight he'd taken straight to the office. He sat in the break room with his coffee and his tablet, and told himself he was reviewing the Tokyo deck. He reviewed 2 slides in 40 minutes. Harmony walked in at 7:58, hoodie, sneakers, bag on one shoulder, no second container. He noticed immediately, said nothing. Their morning briefing ran the same as it always did. Numbers, projections, the Nakamura revision, a disagreement about a risk model that Harmony won because she was right and they both knew it. He was sharp, she was sharper, everything was normal, except it wasn't. He kept doing this thing where he'd finish a sentence and then go quiet for just a half-second longer than necessary, like he was waiting for something. Like there was a line after his line that he expected to hear and kept not hearing. Harmony didn't notice, or if she noticed, she didn't show it. By 10 a.m. she had her headphones in and she was deep in a valuation model, and the morning was moving the way mornings moved on the 34th floor, fast and relentless and with no room for anything that wasn't billable. Bria noticed. Bria always noticed. She was at her desk eating a granola bar when Benji came over to refill his water bottle and mentioned, purely in the spirit of office conversation, that someone had called for Harmony at the front desk the night before after she left. A man. Nice voice. Left a callback number. Bria looked at Benji. Benji looked at Bria. Benji was 24 years old and new enough to the firm that he didn't fully understand what he'd just dropped into, but old enough to sense from Bria's expression that it was something. "Did you tell anyone else that?" Bria asked. "I mean, I mentioned it too." Benji thought about it. "Raymond's assistant, and I think Patrick from compliance heard me." Bria closed her eyes briefly. "Benji, go refill your water bottle somewhere else." By noon, the story had traveled the full length of the 34th floor in the way office information always travels Not through announcements, but through proximity and assumption. What people knew, Harmony left early. A man called for her. She'd been wearing earrings. What people concluded. There was someone. What nobody clarified. Anything. Yoongi heard it, the way you hear something you weren't supposed to hear. Sideways. Through Benji, asking an innocent logistical question about whether Harmony would be in late today, and in the asking of that question revealing enough context that Yoongi spent the next 20 minutes very carefully not reacting. He called 3 people into his office before lunch. He scheduled a review for a project that wasn't due for 2 weeks. He sent Harmony an email on the Tokyo project team. The Tokyo project was a partners-level assignment. Harmony was not a partner. Bria pulled up the email chain, read it twice, and walked over to Felix's desk. "He just added her to Tokyo," she said. Felix looked up from his screen. "Tokyo is partners only, I know." Felix thought about it for a moment. He's keeping her close. He doesn't even know he's doing it. Felix looked at her. That makes it worse. Bria went back to her desk and opened her bottom drawer and looked at the sticky note. 20 names. She added a small asterisk next to 3 of them. The 3 people who had bet on him doing something embarrassing before he figured it out. Things were moving that evening, 8:46 p.m. The break room counter was empty again. Yoongi walked past it, going to get water he didn't need, and looked at that counter, the way you look at something that keeps not being what you expect it to be. He stood there a moment. Then he went back to his office and ordered delivery. He ate about a third of it. The delivery driver, a guy named Curtis, who'd been bringing food to this building for 6 years, told his wife that night that the rich Korean guy on the 34th floor had ordered from them 3 nights in a row now and barely touched any of it. His wife said that meant one of 2 things. Either the man was sick or the man was in trouble. Curtis thought about it. "Yeah," he said, "probably the second one." Let's go back 18 months. Because to understand what happened between these 2 people, you have to understand what Harmony heard before any of this began. It was a firm dinner at a private room in Gramercy. The kind of dinner where the wine costs more than most people's rent, and the conversation sounds like a documentary about money. Harmony had been at the firm for 3 months. She was already the best analyst on her floor, and 2 of the senior partners knew it, even if they hadn't said it out loud yet. She'd been watching Yoon-gi for all 3 of those months, with the specific awareness of a woman who knows she's in trouble, and has not yet decided what to do about it. He wasn't what she'd expected. She'd expected difficult. She'd expected the particular coldness that men with that much money sometimes wore like a uniform. What she got was someone who argued with her about numbers because he respected her enough to disagree, who laughed at her jokes with genuine surprise like she'd caught him off guard, and who had this quality of focus when he was in a conversation with her that made her feel like the only person in the building. She'd spent weeks building her nerve, not to confess anything dramatic, just to open a door slightly, to say something honest and see what happened. She was almost ready. That night at the Gramercy dinner, she was almost ready. She was in the hallway outside the private room, waiting for a colleague when she heard Yoon-ji's voice through the half-open door. He was talking to Raymond, relaxed, easy, the voice of a man saying something he'd said before and believed completely. "I don't do that," he said. "Date people from work. My father did it twice, destroyed 2 teams and 1 marriage. I don't mix those rooms, never have." Raymond laughed, said something agreeable. They moved on to something else. Harmony stood in that hallway while catering staff moved around her, and the sound of the dinner floated through the door, and she was very, very still. She didn't cry. She had never been the kind of woman who cried in hallways over things she couldn't control. She was the kind of woman who assessed, recalibrated, and moved in a better direction. She's buried the feeling she had for him that day, tucked it away. She went back into the dinner, and she was fine. She was completely fine. 3 weeks later, she started bringing the extra food. She never analyzed it too hard. She cooked anyway. He forgot to eat. It was practical. She told herself this for 348 days and almost believed it. 2 weeks into the Tokyo project, the 34th floor had reorganized itself around the tension the way buildings shift around water damage, quietly, structurally, and in ways that made everything slightly crooked. The Tokyo crunch meant late nights. It meant Yoon-gi and Harmony in the same conference room for hours at a stretch, just the two of them, and a whiteboard covered in numbers and a coffee machine that had stopped working correctly on day 3 and nobody had fixed. It meant the kind of proximity that strips away all the professional padding you usually keep between yourself and the things you're not dealing with. Harmony was fine with it. She was good at compartmentalizing. She had been doing it for almost a year. Yoon-gi was not fine with it. He was good at everything except this. On the 4th night, somewhere around 11 p.m., he looked up from the model they were building and watched her catch an error in a formula that would have thrown the whole back half of the projection off, and she caught it in less than 30 seconds, and she didn't make a thing of it. She just fixed it and kept moving. And he sat there for a moment after she'd already moved on, and something in his chest did something he didn't have a category for. He went back to his numbers. On the 5th night, she brought tea, not from outside. She made it from the break room supplies, some herbal thing she'd found in the cabinet, and she put it next to him without saying anything, and he drank the whole thing without looking up. After she left that night, he stood in the conference room for a while in the dark. He was not a man who confused himself. He built systems. He understood structures. He saw patterns before other people saw data. It was the thing that had made him very good at what he did from a very young age. And it was the thing that had made him confident, perhaps too confident, that he understood most situations clearly. He did not understand this situation clearly. He understood that he kept going to the break room out of habit. He understood that the habit felt different now that there was nothing there. He understood that the Tokyo project had his best people on it, and he had added Harmony a week before the crunch kicked in without a clean explanation for why. He understood all of that. He just hadn't lined up what it meant, not yet. Meanwhile, Harmony had received a phone call. She took it in the bathroom on a Tuesday afternoon during a break in a board presentation that was running long. The voice on the other end was calm and professional and told her that Langston and Reed were prepared to move forward with a formal offer. Langston and Reed. 6 analysts a decade, the kind of firm where you didn't apply. They found you. They'd found her. She stood in the bathroom with the phone in her hand and the board meeting audible through the wall, and she breathed once, slowly, and said, "Send it over." She walked back into the board meeting. She sat down. She pulled up her notes. She was the first person to speak when the presentation resumed. Nobody in that room could have told you anything was different about her. That evening she read the offer at her desk, with her headphones in and her face completely neutral, and she thought about it for a long time, and then she opened her email and typed one line. "I accept. Thank you for the opportunity." She closed the email. She looked across the floor at the light on in the corner office. She watched Yoon-gi's silhouette move behind the frosted glass, back and forth, back and forth. The walk of a man thinking through something big. She put her headphones back in. She did not look at the corner office again. It was Bria who saw it happen. She walked past Harmony's desk with 2 coffees and noticed the Langston and Reed letterhead on the screen for exactly 2 seconds before Harmony minimized the window. And Bria was sharp enough and had watched enough to put it together immediately. She sat down at her own desk and put both coffees down and stared at her monitor without seeing anything on it. After a while, she got up and walked to Harmony's desk. Harmony had her headphones in. Bria sat in the chair beside her and waited. Harmony looked over, saw Bria's face, and took one earbud out. "You got an offer," Bria said quietly. Harmony looked at her. "Langston and Reed," Bria said. A long silence. "Bria, are you taking another silence?" "Longer. I already took it," Harmony said. Bria didn't say anything for a moment. She looked at her coffee. She looked at Harmony. She thought about the sticky note in her drawer. 20 names and $44 and 4 months of an office that had been watching and waiting and hoping. "You have to tell him," Bria said. "I gave my notice to HR this morning. That's not what I mean, and you know it." Harmony put her earbud back in, not to be rude, because she was done with the conversation. Bria went back to her desk. She sat there for the rest of the afternoon, not getting very much done. That night, Harmony walked past the break room on her way to the elevator, and Yoon-gi was in there again. Standing at the counter, not eating, not doing anything. Just standing there the way he'd been standing there every evening for 2 weeks now, like a man looking for something he couldn't name. She stopped because her badge was acting up and she needed an override to get the elevator moving. She stepped into the break room. She asked him to buzz her out. He looked up. He looked at her in the specific way he'd been looking at her for the past 2 weeks, with that half-second delay, like his eyes arrived a beat before his brain caught up. "You've been leaving earlier," he said. He said it like he hadn't meant to. "Little bit. Everything okay?" "Yeah," she moved toward the door, just tying up some loose ends. She didn't look back. He stood there after she left and did not move for a long time. Loose ends. He turned those 2 words over like a man trying to find the side they made sense from. He ordered delivery at 9:30. Didn't touch it. Went home at midnight. Stood in his apartment in the dark with the city laid out below him and thought about a woman on the floor of a break room, with reading glasses pushed up the wrong way, and a second container she always brought without being asked. He felt restless. He went to bed. He did not sleep for a long time. It was the 6th night of the Tokyo Crunch that finally cracked it open. They were in the conference room again. The whiteboard was covered. The broken coffee machine had been replaced by an electric kettle Harmony, brought from Holmes because she'd gotten tired of waiting for facilities to fix the other one. There were 2 mugs on the table and a problem in the back half of the model that wasn't resolving cleanly, and they'd been at it for 40 minutes. Yoon-gi put his pen down. "What changed?" he said. Harmony was looking at her screen. "With the model? With you?" He paused. She waited. "The food," he said, and then stopped. Like the word food was somehow not big enough for what he was actually asking, and they both knew it. She looked at him for a moment. "I was just cooking extra. It wasn't a thing. It felt like a thing." The room was very quiet. "Yoon-gi," she said, and her voice was even and kind and final in a way that was worse than an argument. "Eat a real dinner. Get some sleep." She went back to her screen. He went back to his numbers, but he sat there for the next 2 hours and solved 0 problems because his brain had stopped working on the model and started working on something else entirely. It felt like a thing. He'd said that out loud to her. At 10:47 p.m. in a conference room while the city hummed 40 floors below, and she had looked at him with those calm, steady eyes, and she had told him it wasn't a thing, and he had believed her for exactly 4 seconds before his own words came back to him. It felt like a thing because it was a thing. And if it was a thing for him, the man who'd been eating dinner off a break room floor for the better part of a year, without once asking what it meant, what had it been for her? He went home at midnight. He sat in his apartment in the dark. He did the thing he almost never did, which was let himself think about something that didn't have a clean answer. He thought about the evenings, the consistency of it. Nobody did something for that long out of practicality. You did something that many times because it had become part of the shape of your day, because the person you were doing it for had become part of the shape of your day. He thought about the sticky notes. He opened his desk drawer. The small stack was there. He took them out and read them in order. Every protein count, every little note in her handwriting. He sat with them in his hand for a long time. Then he called Benji. Benji answered on the second ring because he had learned very early that not answering Yoon-gi's calls had consequences. "Is Harmony leaving the firm?" Yoon-gi said, not a question. The kind of sentence that already knows the answer and is just asking to confirm. A very long pause from Benji. "I'm not really the right person to." "Benji, she put in her notice 3 weeks ago." Benji said it quickly, the way you say something painful quickly to get it over with. 6 weeks notice per her contract. I found out from HR. I didn't know if you Yoon-gi ended the call." He sat in his apartment. 3 weeks ago, she'd given notice 3 weeks ago. The same week she started leaving early. The same week the break room counter started being empty. She'd already decided. She'd already said yes to something else before he'd even started feeling the shape of what was missing. He looked at the sticky notes in his hand. He thought about the way she'd said tying up loose ends. He thought about her in the conference room, the way she argued with him because she was right. The way she made him laugh when he was too tired and too deep in numbers to remember how. He was a man who built things, companies, structures, systems that worked because they were designed well from the foundation up. And he had spent months standing next to someone extraordinary and telling himself that the warmth he felt was professional, and the weight he felt when she wasn't, there was just tiredness, and the specific quality of her attention was just competence. He had designed a very careful system for not seeing what was in front of him, and it had worked perfectly, right up until it didn't. The next morning he was at a Korean market in Harlem by 6:15 a.m. Not because he'd planned it, because he'd woken up at 5 a.m., thought about it for an hour, and made a decision with the same directness he applied to everything else in his life once he'd finally accepted what the data was telling him. He bought what he needed. He went back to his apartment. He cooked. It took him longer than it would have taken her. He made rice and a soft-boiled egg in a stew that he'd made with his mother growing up and hadn't made since. And he packed it into containers, and he wrote a sticky note and put the protein count on it, because she tracked macros, and he knew that. He brought it to the office. He set it up in the break room at 7:30 a.m. He went back to his office and tried to act normal. Bria walked in at 7:45, looked at the containers on the counter, looked at the sticky notes, stood completely still for 4 seconds, walked back out, and sent one message to the group chat. Her phone responded 11 times in the next 3 minutes. Felix came in at 7:50, looked at the counter, looked at Bria, and sat down at his desk very quietly. He opened his laptop. He did not open a spreadsheet. He was watching the break room. The 34th floor, by 7:55, was operating at the specific frequency of a room full of people pretending to work while watching something they had bet actual money on. Harmony arrived at 7:58. She came off the elevator the way she always came off the elevator, bag on one shoulder, headphones around her neck, moving at the pace of someone who had already decided how the morning was going to go. She saw the break room through the glass before she reached it. She slowed down. She stopped. There were containers on the counter, sticky notes on the lids. She could read them from where she was standing. She went in. She picked up the nearest sticky note. She read it. She set it down. She picked up the container. She opened the lid, looked at what was inside, and closed it again. She did all of this very carefully, the way a person handles something that might break if they're not paying attention. Yoon-gi was standing on the other side of the counter. He'd come out of his office when he heard her badge at the door. He was standing very still in the way people stand still when they've already said the thing they needed to say with their actions, and are now waiting to find out what it meant. The silence went on long enough that outside the glass Bria had stopped breathing. "You wrote protein counts," Harmony said. "You always wrote protein counts because you track macros." "I know." She looked at him. He looked back. "Yoon-gi, I know you're leaving." The room was very quiet. "It's a good opportunity," she said. "I know it is." He didn't move. He didn't come around the counter. He just stayed where he was and said the thing. "I should have said something a long time ago. I didn't. That's on me." Said something about what? He looked at her for a moment. And this was the version of him she'd never quite seen before. Not the CEO. Not the man with the red pen and the packed calendar. Not the person who sat across from her on a break room floor eating dinner like it was the most natural thing in the world. This was the version underneath all of that. A man who had finally caught up to what he felt and was not going to pretend otherwise. "I don't want you to go," he said. "That's not a reason." "I know." He stepped out from around the counter. "Not close enough to be pressure, close enough to be real. I'm not asking you to stay for the job. I missed you. 3 weeks of an empty counter, and I missed you every single night, and I kept telling myself it was about the food, and then I stopped being able to tell myself that." Harmony didn't say anything. She was doing that thing she did, processing everything internally while her face stayed composed. but she was holding the container with both hands, and she had gone very still. "I know that's not your problem," he said. "I know I don't get to drop this on you now and expect it to fix anything. But I'm asking for a chance to be different, if you'll give it." She looked at him for a long time, the kind of look that covers a lot of distance fast. "You said you'd never date someone from work," she said. He went very still. 18 months ago, the Gramercy dinner. You were talking to Raymond. I was in the hallway." He said nothing. She watched him run it back. The dinner, the hallway, Raymond. The thing he'd said with complete certainty because he'd believed it completely. "You heard that," he said. "I heard that, and then you started bringing food." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. They stood there in the full weight of it, not arguing, not performing. Just two people in a break room at 8 a.m. finally standing in the same room as the truth that had been living between them for a year and a half. "I was going to say something," she said, and her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. Not anger, not grief exactly, just the particular tiredness of a person who carried something quietly for a very long time. "Before I heard you, I was building up to it. 6 weeks. I was preparing to confess my feelings. Harmony. And then I heard what you said and I recalibrated." She looked at him. "So I took everything I was going to do with what I felt and I redirected it. And I told myself the food was practical. I told myself that for almost a year." "Was it?" he asked quietly. She looked at him for a long moment. "No," she said, "it wasn't. Now if you're watching this and your chest is tight, good. That means you've been paying attention. Drop a comment right now. Are you Team Harmony, or do you think Yoongi deserves a chance to fix this? We want to know. Like the video if you're still watching and subscribe if you haven't already." They left the office. This had never happened at 8 a.m. in the middle of a project crunch. People would talk about it for a while. They walked through Bryant Park because it was close, and neither of them said where they were going. They just both went the same way you do. When two people have been synchronized for long enough, that direction becomes automatic. October in New York. Cold that sharpens everything and makes the city feel more itself than usual. The trees were turning. The fountains were off for autumn. There were pigeons doing pigeon things. She told him everything. About the hallway. About the food being both the most honest thing she'd done in a year and the most dishonest story she'd told herself about it. He listened the way he listened when it mattered, without interrupting. Then he told her his. He told her about the Gramercy conversation, what he'd meant when he said it and why he'd meant it. About his father. About watching ambition and proximity and feeling become a thing that destroyed the people around him, and deciding at some point that he would not let that happen in his own life. "I made a rule," he said, "and I kept it so consistently that I stopped questioning it. Even when you should have, even then." He looked at her. "The Tokyo project. I added you the day after you started leaving early. I told myself it was because you were the right person for it." "Were you lying?" He thought about it honestly. "Partly. The part that wasn't lying was that you are the right person for it. You're the right person for most things." He paused. "The other part was that I wasn't ready for you to be somewhere I couldn't see you." Harmony stopped walking. He stopped beside her. "You kept me close," she said. "Yes, while I was trying to leave. Yes." She looked at him. And this was the moment, not the containers in the break room, not the protein counts, not even the thing he'd said about missing her every night for 3 weeks. This was the moment where she let herself see him completely. This frustrating, brilliant, emotionally late man standing in a park in October, trying to tell the truth before it was too late. "I'm not rejecting the job," she said. "I know. I wouldn't ask you to. If this becomes something and you mess it up, I will never cook for you again." He almost smiled. "I'll learn to cook," he said. She looked at him for one more long moment. Then she started walking again. He walked beside her. Back at the office, the afternoon ran the way afternoons ran on the 34th floor. Fast, relentless, full of problems that needed solving. Harmony was at her desk by 10. Yoongi was in his office by 10:05. Nobody said anything directly to either of them, but the quality of silence on that floor for the rest of the day was the silence of a room full of people exercising enormous restraint. Bria lasted until 3 p.m. She came to Harmony's desk with 2 coffees and sat down. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and you cannot be mad at me." Harmony took her headphones off. That is never a good way to start a conversation. "Remember 4 months ago when we all noticed?" Bria gestured generally. "You know, the thing, Bria. There's a bet." Bria said it fast. "There has been a bet for 4 months. 20 people, $2 amounts, $44 total, I'm sorry. I tried to stop it at 16 people, but Felix got involved, and once Felix believes in something." Harmony was quiet for a long moment. "How much is in the pot?" she said. $44. $44. She sat back. "This man has the entire floor losing their minds for $44. To be fair, some of us would have done it for free." Harmony looked at her. There was something in her face that was almost a laugh and also something else. Something that had been sitting quietly for a long time and was just now getting a little air. "Who won?" she said. "Officially. The 3 people who bet he'd do something embarrassing before he figured it out." "Felix voted on this?" "Felix proposed the ruling." Harmony shook her head slowly. She picked up her coffee. "You know what the worst part is," she said. "What? I'm not even mad about the bet. I'm mad about the year," she said it quietly. Not with heat, just the plain fact of it. "I walked around this office for almost a year, carrying something I didn't ask to carry, and everyone here saw it except the one person who needed to." Bria didn't say anything, because there was nothing to say that improved on that. "He came around," Bria said finally, carefully. "Yeah." Harmony picked up her headphones. "They always come around." She paused. "The question is always what condition you're in by the time they do." She put her headphones in. Bria went back to her desk. She opened her bottom drawer. She looked at the sticky note for a long time. Then she peeled it off and folded it and put it in her pocket. She wasn't ready to throw it away. But she also didn't need it on display anymore. Raymond called Yoongi at 4:30 p.m. Raymond was 62 years old and had been in this business long enough that very little surprised him. He had watched this particular situation develop from 2 floors above with the patience of a man who knew that some things resolved themselves if you left them alone, and some things needed a small push, and the skill was knowing which was which. He'd decided 3 weeks ago this one needed a push. He'd told Benji to mention the callback from the front desk to the right people. He would not confirm this if asked. "I heard you finally figured it out," Raymond said. "Raymond, she's the best analyst this floor has seen in 10 years. You know that." "I know." "She's also leaving." "I know. Because you took 18 months to notice something the cleaning crew could have told you." Yoongi said nothing. "I'm not calling to lecture you," Raymond said. "I'm calling because what I said at that Gramercy dinner 18 months ago, the thing about not mixing rooms, I was wrong to say. That, or I was wrong to say it so absolutely." A pause. "I watched your father and I drew the wrong conclusion. Your father had a problem with boundaries. You are not your father, Raymond. I'm just saying, for the record." Another pause. "Also take that woman to dinner, a real dinner, not the break room floor." He hung up. Yoongi held the phone for a moment. Then he put it down and sat back in his chair and looked at the ceiling. Then he opened his laptop and sent Harmony a message. Just one line. "Dinner Friday. A real restaurant if you want." He looked at it for a second. Then he added one more line. "I'll pick the restaurant. You tell me if it has good macros." He sent it before he changed his mind. Across the floor he heard, through the glass, faintly, the sound of Harmony Martin laughing. He looked at his screen and stayed very still so nobody would see him smiling. The Friday dinner was not a grand gesture. It was a Korean restaurant in the West Village that had 20 seats and no sign out front, and a chef who trained in Seoul and opened this place because he wanted to cook the food he actually wanted to eat. It wasn't expensive in the way of impressing someone. It was expensive in the way of something being genuinely worth what it cost. Harmony showed up in dark pants and a clean white shirt and small gold earrings. She walked in looking like herself, which was the thing Yoongi had always noticed. She never performed being someone else. He was already there. He stood up when she came in, which was the kind of small thing that says more than a speech. They sat down, they ordered, they talked. Not about work, about everything else. About where she grew up. Harlem, third floor of a brownstone her grandmother still owned. About why she went into finance. Because numbers were honest in a way people sometimes weren't. About the first time she realized she was good at it, which was a high school math competition she almost didn't enter because the registration form was confusing. He told her about Soul, about the company he'd built and why. About his mother who called him every Sunday at 9 a.m. regardless of time zones and had strong opinions about what he should be eating which. He paused here. He had been failing to address adequately. She would have appreciated the containers. Harmony said. She would have demanded the recipe. He looked at her across the table. For the record, the stew I made last week was hers. I called her at 5:30 a.m. to ask how to do it. Harmony looked at him. You called your mother at 5:30 in the morning. It was 6:30 p.m. in Seoul. You planned this. I bought groceries at 6 a.m. At some point it became committed. She looked at him for a moment. Then she picked up her glass. Okay, she said, I'll give you the stew. He understood exactly what she meant. He picked up his glass. They stayed at that restaurant for 3 hours. The chef sent out 2 extra dishes he hadn't ordered because they'd been there long enough and were deep enough in conversation that he liked the look of them together. When they left, she walked a block and a half before he reached for her hand. Not dramatically. Just the way you do something you've been thinking about for a while when you finally decide it's time. She let him. They walked like that to the subway. At the entrance, she stopped and looked at him. I start at Langston and Reed in 3 weeks, she said. I know. That's still happening. I know. He looked back at her. I'm not trying to hold anything still. I just want to be in it. She looked at him for a moment, then she squeezed his hand once briefly and let go. 3 weeks, she said. Don't waste them. She went down the stairs. He stood at the top and watched until she was through the turnstile, and then he turned around and walked home with his hands in his pockets and something in his chest that felt like the relief of a man who almost missed his train. Harmony's last day was a Thursday. The 34th floor did the thing offices do. A cake appeared in the break room at 11 a.m. Someone had ordered it from the place on 48th Street that did good custom work. It said best analyst we've ever lost in clean blue lettering, and Harmony looked at it for a long moment and then said, who approved this message? And Bria said, nobody, I just told them what to write. And that was the most Bria thing that had ever happened. People came by her desk throughout the day, not in a parade. One at a time the way people do when they mean it. The compliance guy who she'd helped with a model 2 years ago that he still used. The junior analyst who had watched her work and taken notes without telling her. Benji, who came by at 2 p.m. and stood there awkwardly until she said, what Benji? And he said, you were always nice to me when you didn't have to be. And she said, you're a good assistant. And he nodded and walked away looking like he'd accomplished something important. Felix came by at 4. He shook her hand. He said, don't make them boring, she said, never. That was the entire conversation, and it was enough, Bria cried. Not a lot, just enough. She had promised herself she wouldn't, and then Harmony started packing her desk, and something about the sight of a woman packing 3 years of herself into a single bag was too much. She walked over and hugged Harmony from behind, and Harmony froze for a second and then laughed softly and patted her arm. You are so embarrassing, Harmony said. I know, Bria said into her shoulder. I don't care. They stayed like that for a few seconds. Then Bria let go and went back to her desk and blew her nose with great dignity. At 5:30, Harmony packed the last thing in her bag. She stood at her desk and looked at the floor. 3 years of late nights and early mornings. 3 years of problems she solved and battles she won quietly, and at least one feeling she had carried further than she should have and then put down exactly when she needed to. She was not sad, that was the thing. She had expected to be sad, and instead she felt like a woman who had finished a long run, tired, clear, ready. She picked up her bag, she walked to the elevator, she pressed the button. Behind her she heard footsteps, not running, walking. The particular walk of a man who had somewhere to be and knew it. She turned around. Yoon-gi was coming across the floor carrying a thermal container. He looked like himself, jacket on, sleeves down for once, moving with the calm directness of a man who had thought about this moment and was ready for it. She watched him come. He held out the container. "You forgot something," he said. She looked at him. She looked at the container. She took it. She turned it over in her hands. It was warm. She could feel it through the sides. She opened the lid. Rice. A perfectly soft boiled egg. The stew from his mother's recipe. Better this time than last week, she could tell by the smell. There was a sticky note on the inside of the lid. She read it. Her eyes went soft. Not sad. Something else, the specific look of a person receiving something they stopped expecting. "You put the protein count," she said. "I know you track macros." She closed the lid. She looked at him for a long moment. This man, this particular, frustrating, finally arrived man who had sat across from her on a break room floor for a year eating food she made for him out of love she never named and had taken 18 months to catch up to what it was. "The note," she said. "You can read it when you get home. I'm reading it now. Harmony. Yoon-gi." A pause. He almost smiled. She saw it. "Can you just let me have that?" he said. She looked at him for another second. Then she closed the container and held it against her chest. "I'm starting at Langston and Reed on Monday," she said. "I know. I'm going to be very busy. I know. You have to text first sometimes." "I will." She looked at him. "You're going to forget to eat," she said. "Probably. I'm not bringing you food anymore. I know." He looked back at her. "I'll figure it out." She pressed the elevator button again. It opened. She stepped in. He stepped in beside her. She looked at him. "Where do you think you're going?" she said. "Same direction you are. The exit is down there. I know where the exit is." The elevator doors closed. On the 34th floor, Bria looked up. Felix looked up. Benji looked up. Bria opened her bottom drawer. She took out the folded sticky note. She unfolded it, looked at it one more time. 20 names. $2 amounts, $44, 4 months. She folded it up again. She put it in her pocket. She looked at Felix. Felix looked at her. 63%, Bria said. "I was wrong," Felix said. "Yeah," Bria sat back. "You were. Downstairs." They came out of the building onto 6th Avenue. October. The city doing the thing it did in October. Cold air and yellow light and the particular energy of a place that never stops moving. She still had the container. He was still walking beside her. They didn't talk for half a block. They didn't need to. There's a kind of quiet that comes after a long noise finally stops, where you don't fill it right away because the silence itself is worth something. Then Harmony said, "How bad was the stew the first time?" "Not great." "How many attempts?" 3. "My mother stayed on the phone through the last one." Harmony looked at him sideways. "She knows about me," she said. It wasn't a question. "My mother knows about everything." He paused. "She was very interested in the protein count." "What did you tell her?" "That you were the most competent person I'd ever worked with." "What else?" A pause. "That I'd been very slow," he said, "and that I was trying to be less slow." She walked beside him for a moment. What did she say to that? She said that was the most honest thing I'd told her in years, and that I should take you somewhere good for dinner. We already went somewhere good. She knows, I told her. He looked at her. She wants to video call. Harmony stopped walking. "Your mother wants to video call me. She has questions about the stew, specifically the recipe. She thinks I left something out the first time, and she wants to ask you how you make yours." Harmony looked at him for a long moment, this man, standing on a sidewalk in October, telling her his mother wanted to compare stew recipes with the woman he'd just spent a year and a half being oblivious about. She started laughing. He watched her laugh, and he was quiet, and he had the look of a man who had missed this without knowing it and was very glad to be standing next to her again. She stopped laughing. She looked at him. "Fine," she said. "Sunday, tell her Sunday." He nodded. They started walking again. The city moved around them. A cab honked. Someone was selling roasted nuts from a cart. The lights were coming on in the buildings above them, floor by floor, all the way up. Harmony still had the container. She was going to read the note when she got home. She had already decided that. She was going to sit in her Harlem brownstone with a cup of tea and she was going to read it alone, which was how she wanted to receive it, privately, on her own terms. But she already knew what she felt about it. She already knew what she felt about a lot of things. She was walking down with a warm container in her hands and a man beside her who had finally, irreversibly arrived. That was enough. That was more than enough. She looked up at the buildings going gold in the late afternoon light. She kept walking. And that is the end of Harmony Martin's story, or rather, it's the beginning of the better part. Drop a comment and like this video if you stayed until the end. Subscribe if this story gave you something. And if you want to see more stories like this one, hit the bell so you never miss one.